Miss Dalton, it is common knowledge you have been cast into this world without fortune or prospects. It is my desire to have you as my wife.
I am greatly honored by your offer, but I cannot accept.
This offer will not be extended a second time.
Third, actually.
Out of my way, idiot geese!
My dearest Selina, will you come visit me in London? I promise you will be well entertained. I need your assistance. There is a gentleman, Mr. Malcolm. He humiliated me. No. I then found out he had a list.
You have a list of qualifications for a bride.
I would love for Mr. Malcolm to receive the comeuppance he deserves. Plus, it could be rather fun. If we present you as the perfect woman, then he discovers he does not meet the requirements on your list. That would be a perfect sort of poetic justice.
Mr. Malcolm, there's someone I want to introduce you to, Miss Selina Dalton.
I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance. Perhaps you might join me for a tour of the picture gallery.
Most certainly have a reputation.
Is that the famous Mr. Malcolm? Do you know him?
And you believe this description of me?
He was very impressed by her wit and humour.
I must be nearsighted.
May I assist?
Selina, it is working.
Why did you come to London, Miss Dalton?
Because I was lonely.
I was lonely too before you came.
Your list is a shield. You do not want to give your heart to a woman unworthy.
It gives us hope, and hope is a good thing.
Perhaps I am mistaken in thinking hope a useless thing.
You're being blinded by his intelligent conversation and devastatingly handsome good looks. What?
You thought to humiliate Malcolm, and you end up presenting him with the perfect wife, and that must sting.
Wish me luck, old boy.
I don't think you'll meet it.
It is time to show Malcolm your list.
I do not think Mr. Malcolm is the man you think he is.
Seems you have been deceiving me from the beginning.
Love cannot be planned so carefully. It will stir things up a bit. That is part of its charm.
Okay. Emma Holly-Jones, director of Mr. Malcolm's List. Thanks for joining us on Screen Watching, and congratulations on this utterly lovely film. You've lived with Selina's story now for several years, from Suzanne Allen's novel to the short to the feature. What is it about Selina and her journey that has drawn you in, and I guess will draw audiences in?
Well, I think it was a bit more broader for me. Like, obviously, I love these characters, but it's such an ensemble, so it's very hard for me to say I was just drawn to one. I was sort of drawn to all of them. But, I think I found the script 7 years ago, and I think the thing that drew me to it the most was just sort of the sort of rom-com energy about it. I wasn't really looking for something that was necessarily Regency or period. It just happened to be period. But what I felt Malcolm's had in its original form was all the potential of one of those great ensemble rom-coms that we haven't seen in so long, and that was sort of really what kept me going on it. But in terms of Selina and Mr. Malcolm, I mean, obviously it was an unpublished, self-published novel written 20 years ago, then a script, then a podcast, then a short film, and then a feature film. So, I obviously got involved when I heard it on the Blacklist Table Reads podcast and optioned the material. But, I took those characters, on a massive journey. I think it was very much about bringing Selina into into 2022. This book was written 20 years ago. And, I felt that she really needed, and Julia, Zawe Ashton's character, really needed to feel relatable for women today. So it's been, a really fun development process, really from start to finish for me.
Well, that's interesting, because I want to look at Mr. Malcolm first, and he's a very interesting character to unpack. And the fact that you say that the novel is 20 years old now, because in contemporary terms, a man who ticks off a list of traits he needs to find a partner would not seem particularly sympathetic. Tell us about exploring the character and in crafting it with Sope Dirisu.
Yeah, so I think, you know, it's funny because when I first heard the script, the list element really reminded me of an old episode of Friends. It completely went back to the like Ross and Rachel like writing the list about whether they should or should not be together.
Sure.
And it made me realize that we all sort of write lists. And I think I wrote a pros and cons list about someone when I was in high school or something, you know, and I realized it's not actually that dated a concept. I think we all have, to a degree, you know, boundaries of what we're willing to be within not. And I think for Chope and me, it was really about, you know, kind of finding the modern parallels within everything. So, you know, we spoke a lot about, you know, for example, at the opera, when he's sort of testing her on the corn laws or whatever she's doing, he's doing, we were like, it's almost like swiping left or right on Tinder, you know, like we try to always like find that sort of modern energy to completely help these actors sort of relate to the ridiculousness of the social norms of the time. And, you know, like the caricature, for example, you know, Zowie and me were like, it's very much like getting paparazzied at, you know, your worst possible moment and waking up and seeing yourself on the Daily Mail looking, you know, very embarrassing. That's what the caricature is, you know?
Yeah.
So I think very much exploring sort of modern parallels, but also just having a lot of fun and letting him lean into, you know, the big romantic, you know, hero. I think it was obviously so wonderful for him and Frida as two leads of color to really, you know, take on two romantic leads, which is actually something that's rarely been done. So I think there was just a lot of excitement and energy there from both of them.
We're going to get to that point very soon. I do want to mention the very casting of Frida Pinto as Selena, because she does a lot of the heavy lifting just in her presence, and then she embodies the role beautifully. What are her qualities as an actress that made her so right?
Well, I think Selena, I was going to say Serena because I was about to say the word serene. Selena, to me, is very serene and at peace and calm and, you know, very comfortable in her own skin, which is something that I think Frida massively is. You know, I think we used to, you know, had jokes on set, like, you know, we called her an angel because just everything she does is sort of perfect. And, you know, the rest of me and the cast might be like sneaking a cigarette around the back and we're like, no, Frida's coming, hide. Like, we have to be perfect, you know? She's very serene, very confident. And I think that's what was interesting to me about where Frida and I took Selena, was that, you know, she's not some schmuck who gets picked up in a scheme and is too weak to say no. You know, she actually chooses to take part because maybe it's a little bit of selfish behavior for the first time in her life, and she deserves that too. So actually say, no, I want to stay in London. No, I want to meet people my own age. No, I'm not going to lose this opportunity for myself. And I love that about Frida's, you know, performance, how confident she made Selena, which I think was so important for, you know, women today. I think the last thing I wanted was a film which is just about a girl who has nothing until she has, you know, Prince Charming. That wasn't really the purpose for Julia or Selena. And their friendship is also obviously a huge part of it. And I think she brought a lot of her natural, you know, sensibilities to it. And let's be honest, the woman is absolutely drop dead gorgeous. So having, you know, that beautiful face on screen every day and Chope's beautiful face as a filmmaker is just a wonderful faces to film, you know.
They certainly are. It is a beautiful cast. There's no doubt about that, and they all handle their roles perfectly. Okay, so it almost feels wrong that we even need to discuss the casting of people of color in this day and age, because that is exactly how it should be. But the genre has been a white cast only form of cinema forever, I guess. It almost feels like you address it by not addressing it. It just is, which is how it should be. Is there a comment on 19th century high society or the genre itself that you were trying to make in the casting?
Well, I think it comes down to two things for me, which are honestly opposite ends of the spectrum, which is one, it's fantasy, it's a movie. The world does not look whitewashed anymore. So let's be inclusive and cast wonderful people and, you know, represent the worlds we actually live in within the art we make. So that on one side of it. And then on the other side, I think when I first found the script, I actually saw Hamilton in New York around the same time. And I came out of that show and it really challenged for me, like I think as an artist and as a filmmaker, what I thought the world looked like in, the early 19th century in England, or, Europe, or what was actually going on. And I realized Hollywood have only painted it one way. My school education only painted it one way. And all it takes is a couple minutes in Google to realize actually the world was a lot more diverse and there was a lot more stories and a lot more things going on in London than any film had ever painted it before. And that was enough for me. And that was enough for me to pluck and pick and develop and work with incredible designers. I even, spoke to varieties of historians, and, that was enough information for me to take something and run with it. And as you said, not comment on it, because it just is. And I always say to people, when do you really think that movement and immigration around the world started? Because it wasn't post-Regency England, it was probably when they invented the boat. So I think, that part of it to me was, as you said, enough, and not something that I felt the tone of this film needed to comment on. And I would rather it just be and let these wonderful, wonderful actors smash these characters, which I'm in absolutely no doubt that they did, mind and soul.
Yeah, absolutely. In broader terms, the costume drama is a very enduring genre. And you mentioned that you were trying to put a more contemporary spin on the costume drama. Now, I'm old enough to remember when the Merchant Ivory films were huge box office hits, The Room with the Views and The Remains of the Days. And I've seen all the different versions of Emma that have been around, all the way to Downton Abbey. Why do they still hold such sway, both with storytellers like yourselves and audiences?
I think it's escapism. I don't think it's any different from people who love to go spend their money on movies set in space. It's just one's in the future, one's in the past. I think there's a wonderful escapist nature in historical romance. And I think a big part of it is romantic stakes. I actually don't think it's easy to create that sort of chivalry and romance in modern love stories because of technology. So actually not surprised they're like really sort of having a resurgence in a moment, because I think we've all been stuck inside for however many years now, and we're all on our phones and we date by texting and we fight by texting and we don't chase anyone to the airport anymore. So I was like, I think a big part of the love of it is just this grand romantic stakes, and being able to root for characters and really believe in the will they or won't they.
It's all there on screen. Mr. Malcolm's List is a wonderful film, and thank you so much, Emma Holly-Jones, for talking to us on screen, watching. Good luck with the film. It's such a joy. Thank you.
No, thank you.